the record button. All right, here we go. On 3, 2, 1. We are speaking with author, TV personality, Carrie Stevens. The new book, which I'm going to have to put in front of my face, is called Unrated. And it is a fabulous, fabulous read. Mostly because I looked at some of the people that you've been associated with, David Lee Roth, Eric Carr, and Howard Stern, and I was like, that should be me. I like that. I like those three people to, but yeah.
And the degrees of separation between them all, I noticed in my book. Everyone knows everyone. I didn't know that at the time, but yeah.
I know that very well. When you do the rock and roll thing, you say something and then you hear it back from somebody else. And you go, oh, okay, I didn't realize you knew him too. Whoopsie. But let me talk about this book. First of all, what compels you to write a book like Unrated? Because and I mentioned Howard Stern in passing, but he's always been very private. When he had his divorce, he had his moments of running around, but he never named names. He was always very quiet about that. Always. When you write something like that and you start bringing out names, do you get concerned about backlash or what's going to happen? Or are you at a point in your life and your career where you just say, the hell with it, I'm just going to tell my story and deal with it?
I didn't think about, referring specifically to Howard, I didn't think about any backlash at all because A, I have nothing negative to say about him. B,
right.
He was between marriages.
Right.
And I think that, I'm not in touch with him anymore, but I got to know him pretty well. And I think all of us get to a certain point in our lives where we're happy about what we did in the past. And I think that anything I said, he would probably take as a compliment. And I'm actually not the only person to have come out and talk about him. Robin Gibbons recently was talking about how great he is in bed. So she beat me to the punch there. But yeah, I didn't, I'm not to make myself sound like a complete slut over here, but, there's other names too that are not in the book.
Right.
I chose the ones that had the most meaning to me and the ones that were the most interesting. And I think that Howard was unexpected.
Right.
And I think it's interesting that, I didn't start out as a fan or even liking him at all.
Yeah.
And then
you mentioned that very clearly.
Very, very dear to me. And I will always remember him as that sweet guy who supported me through my unplanned pregnancy. He was wonderful.
Yeah, he absolutely was. So let's get into the beginnings or the genesis of your rock and roll love affair, because I know, on Twitter I always talk about rock and roll and you seem to follow that and like that, and you did the Rockstar movie. Talk to me about that first concert experience when you went to see David Lee Roth. You weren't even a fan of Van Halen, which I don't even know how that's possible.
I hadn't heard of them.
How is that possible? We're the same age.
I was so young, and, I grew up in the country listening to, all classic rock, but of course my mother had, Paul McCartney and the Wings and the Beatles and all that stuff, and then the classic rock. And the first concert I ever went to was Journey, and I had the worst seats. All I saw was Steve Perry's ass the entire show.
Some might say those are the best seats.
Maybe. Well, at the time I wasn't thinking that way, but I think I was 14. Anyway, so Van Halen was the second concert I ever went to. Wow. So I think that moment,
right,
when, some kid from the school bus gave me tickets. I didn't know who they were, but we went, we had floor seats, and then David Lee Roth came out. I remember it like yesterday. And I walked into that arena one girl, and I walked out another girl, and I'm still that girl. Like, I'm still a rocker chick. I'm a huge fan of music, and it makes me happy. I'm no different than anyone else. It especially makes me happy to hear, I still like the stuff that I grew up with, the 80s stuff, and it takes me to another place. You know, like I don't want to have like politics and all this conspiracy theories and the heavy stuff, you know, all the time that's thrown at us, you know, on social media. I don't want to hear about the virus all the time. You know, to me, like it's an outlet. Rock and roll is an outlet for me. I'm sure I'm speaking for a lot of people.
Totally for me. I mean,
yeah.
it's my everything. That's what I do all day long. You know, I spend a lot of my day dealing with different issues that, you know, could run somebody down. And so rock and roll is the thing that sort of lifts me up. And it's nice to see it, you know. And if you look at, for example, on my Twitter feed, I don't do the whole political thing. I don't do Trudeau or Trump or Biden. I don't do that stuff. I don't do religion. It's just rock.
Thank you.
Just rock. Right? And that's a nice escape. So I want to get into the whole Van Halen thing first, and then we'll get into Kiss and Eric Carr and all that other stuff. But so you go to this show and it's life-changing. Was it just the show was bigger and bolder than what Journey was doing? Was it because of the four guys on stage?
Journey, I told you I didn't even see anything besides Steve Perry's ass. My seats were like behind the stage. And then, well, yes, Van Halen is completely different than the Journey show. I mean, like, you know, they're jumping in the air and doing splits, and you know, it feels like a party that you want to be a part of. You know, you just want to go party with those guys. All I wanted after that was to meet a long-haired guy, and there was none where I grew up.
It's not working for me.
I bet you had it one day, so a long time ago. But yeah, like,
1984.
My friends in my small town like didn't get it. I'm like, I just want to meet a long-haired guy. I was a teenager, but in the sticks where I lived, like nobody had long hair. So I found plenty of them later in California.
But
Massachusetts.
I want to talk to you about Eddie Van Halen, because as we know, he's passed away. You know, God rest his soul. But he meets you backstage at a Kiss show, and he sees Eric Carr, or you meet him with Eric Carr, and he says to Eric about his cancer, you know, hold on, and here we are all these years later, and he passes away from cancer. Does that moment in your book and now take on a new significance? And I don't want to talk about irony or coincidence, but do you look at that moment and replay it?
Of course of course I went back. You know, it was a very difficult day. I was bawling my eyes out all day. All my old friends, like, you know, Mark Treen from the Bullet Boys, Jimmy DeAnda, and Mark Ferrari, like all of us, because we were all in the scene,
right.
You know, coming up in the scene in the late 80s, early 90s. And, you know, we all knew that our hearts were breaking and reached out to each other. And yeah, I was talking to Mark, and we were talking about, I told him about my book because he hadn't read it. I told him about the part in my book where Eddie's like, oh man, I'm so sorry to Eric. And then Mark was really upset. And I said, I bet I can make you laugh. I have a story that will make you laugh. Let me tell you. So I told him that Eddie Van Halen story. Now Eddie swooped in and said, nice tits, so fast that Eric didn't even notice and went right back to Eric. Oh man, I'm so sorry, man. I'm so sorry. And, you know, after I said it to Mark, I said, well, you know, at least, you know, Eddie had 26 more years than
Eric.
What was it, 24, 26 years? I don't know, I'm bad with math. It's November.
What are we talking here? 2020, it was 1991 for Eric?
Yeah, November of 91.
All right, so that's 29 years, 28 years.
Yeah, so I said at least he got 28 more years than Eric did. That's one way to look at it. But it didn't make me any happier. You know, it's sad all the way around. I mean, Eddie was like our Elvis, you know? Like,
yeah.
I've tried to explain to some non-rocker friends why I was so upset. And I said he represented all of my dreams and my aspirations. Like, everything that I wanted to do was basically because of Van Halen. Like, right. They to this day, like, they inspire me. I mean, I never lost the magic from that first concert I went to, in my heart that the gift that they gave me that night. And so, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and this is how I explained it to folks like you who don't understand the rock and roll thing is when I was growing up and when we grew up at the same time, Elvis died and my mom was really upset and I was like, all right, Elvis
That's
died.
what I was telling a friend.
Right. And then,
Thing.
Frank
I said, I was
Sinatra
a
died
little
and
kid.
yeah.
I saw it on the news about Elvis, but I didn't really know who he was. I think I was like 9 or 10.
Right.
And my mother was at the sink and I went over and I just heard it on the news. I said, Elvis Presley died. And she burst out into tears and started crying. And I was like, because I didn't understand the significance, but so sorry to interrupt.
But that's it. That it's the same thing, right? And then Frank Sinatra dies, and you go, well, and I don't want to sound disrespectful to them. That's not what I'm saying. But you don't understand that you lose a part of yourself. So knowing that we can no longer go see Van Halen with Eddie, then that we can no longer go see UFO with Pete Wade, you lose a part of you. So there's a little chunk in you that dies at the same time, and it's hard to sort of face that.
It felt like not that I'm young, but it felt like the end of my youth somehow. Like it felt like.
Well, yes, you and I, we become our moms in the sense that we're at that age where our heroes won't be on the stage anymore, and we've had 40 years of, hey, next year I'm going to the Van Halen tour. Hey, next year I'm going to the Kiss tour. Hey, next year I'm going to go see Alice Cooper. And now we're getting to the point where, oh shit, next year I'm just going to stare at the wall.
Yeah. Well, Patty, that one hit me really hard too. I had to pull over on the side of the road and start bawling. I'm like, why do I bawl over people I don't even know? But
because it defines you.
Yeah, I had just gone and seen them the summer before, and Bottle Rock, the Napa Festival, and it was so awesome. And yeah, you just feel like they're going to live forever, and unfortunately, none of us are. But,
nope. But they will live with their work and what they've left behind.
Well, they left us something behind.
Yes.
That we can enjoy forever.
Yes. Kind of like Shakespeare still exists in a sense.
Kind of like Unrated.
Yes. Yes, the Unrated.
Like, when I'm gone, everyone can enjoy my book.
Well, they can enjoy it. They can enjoy it now too. So let me get into. Well, actually, you know what? Before we get into to Eric Carr, I want to ask you about the whole Playboy Centerfold thing, in the sense that once you do that, how does the attitude towards you from men change? Because they see you in Playboy, and do they start taking advantage of you? Is there a sort of like, oh well, she was naked, so I can see her naked? Now, like, does it become a very disrespectful?
No, not at all. It wasn't like that at all. It was kind of the opposite. It was like all of a sudden, you're a rock star, Right. It made me famous overnight, and everybody wanted me. Right. And I was well aware that they didn't want me for me. They wanted to say they banged Miss June, Right. So I didn't fall for that stuff. I did things my way and on my terms. I'm glad I was a Centerfold a little bit older in life. I was 28 when it came out. Right. And, a lot of the girls that posed when they were 18 or 22, sorry, I just distracted myself with a thought. Okay, so this is totally sort of on the subject, but sort of off.
No, go wherever you want, because I have a whole interest in the trust issues that come up with something like, because, when you're Eric Carr or you're Gene Simmons, how do you know when somebody likes you for you and how somebody likes you for what you represent or what you are? And is that a difficulty in life?
It is difficult. And I've always had this feeling that whoever I end up with is going to be somebody that I've known for a very long time. Right. I don't know who he is yet, but I just have a feeling that it's going to be someone I've known for a long time, because I do have those trust issues. And I think it's going to have to be somebody that I know well, that will accept me for who I am and not throw judgments at me later. Right. Like my relationships in the book that I explain, how they wait till we're together for a couple of years and then start picking apart my past and getting insecure and jealous. And like, I need somebody who's very sure of themselves, because I know I've led quite the life, and somebody could be intimidated by it, but that was the past, and now is the present. And
Yeah, which is kind of strange because everybody has a past. And so when you're with somebody and they just worry about your past, it's like, hey, dude, or hey, lady, worry about the future. You can't. We can talk about it all day. It's not going to change. You know.
It's so immature, and especially to someone like me who's lost somebody. Like, you realize how silly and petty that is. Because I wish I could go back in time and change a lot of things.
But ultimately, you can't, and so you just gotta move on.
So focus on making every moment the best you can, and otherwise, there's no point in like getting jealous of somebody's, especially dead boyfriend or child or anyone from the past, because the past is over. And
Well, okay. Let me ask you then about Eric. So you meet and you have this volatile relationship, which, reading that to me was I don't want to say shocking, but I met Eric a couple of times when he joined KISS. I wrote him a letter and he actually wrote me back within like 2 weeks. I was like, wow. I was like, well, and I met him backstage at and everybody always says, oh, he's so nice, and he always had interest to you. Like when you met him backstage at the Montreal Forum, it was all about me instead of about Eric. It was like, hey, how long you been a fan? Hey, how long? And I've never encountered that. And then I read your relationship was up and down. And of course, in my head, I go, oh, that can't be Eric. And then I said, well, it's a relationship. Of course there's ups and downs. That's perfectly normal.
Well, I hope I didn't present it like there was...
No.
I mean, there was definitely more ups than downs, but you have to just understand I was 19 years younger than him.
Right.
I was only 18 when I met him, and 22 when he passed. So I was immature.
Right.
And I'm sure a lot of it was my fault. I couldn't fit everything in the book, but
no. But let me ask you this:
most of the volatileness with that part was when, well, in the beginning, he was never mean to me. He just didn't want an 18-year-old girlfriend, so I had to push for that commitment until I got it. And then it was when he was. Well, we didn't know he was sick yet, but it was the end of the Hot in the Shade tour when he started to just give me the odd silent treatment that I didn't know why, and just swung up and down. Now I believe that cancer had already affected him, and we just didn't know it. It was invisible. I mean, it's. I'm not a doctor, and I don't think.
But that's the sense I got from the book, was that he started acting strangely, and this is how I interpreted the book, was that he started acting strangely. He was telling Bruce, man, he was telling Gene and Paul, and they weren't talking. Was he just sort of getting sick, and it was just having an effect on his whole being, and you just didn't realize that it was a symptom?
That's my guess, because it was like suddenly one day he just kind of changed. And he was so inward, and just didn't want to talk, and it didn't make any sense. Like, and why I say I think it was him being sick is because it wasn't anything personal. Come to find out after all these years, I didn't even know until recently when Bruce told me that he's quit talking to Bruce around that time too. I knew he wasn't speaking to Gene and Paul. So, and of course I was so young at the time. Of course, I was just hurt and thought it was all about me. And that was what I cared about, our relationship, not, what he had going on with the band. And then, all these years later, if you look back and you reflect on it, I mean, it didn't take me this long to figure it out. I figured it out back when it was going on, when we found out he was sick.
Right.
So, I mean, I like I said, I'm not a doctor, but I don't think I happen to know you don't just wake up one day and you suddenly have a heart tumor and terminal cancer. It grows for years and years and years. It's there. It just became, symptomatic, unfortunately.
Let let me then ask you a little bit about that Hot in the Shade tour. So we have this stuff going on, as you just said, with Bruce and Paul and all that. In terms of the performances and in terms of going out, you described that he was getting pale and he was having pains and this and that. What else were you noticing on that tour? Because there was, of course, all kinds of business things going on. The tour was maybe not as successful as Kiss is used to. What was sort of the general ambiance just around the camp, that Kiss camp at that time? Were they having a good time on the road, or were they trying to save a sinking ship?
I don't know. All I know is I'd go out on the road, and I have memories of the nights that they were leaving straight after the show. Bruce's then wife Christina and I would rush onto the tour bus. We were expected to be there waiting, and they would come off the stage, straight up the stage, sweaty and all pissed off at each other. And yeah, it wasn't fun party afterwards ever. It was like, somebody was mad at somebody for not doing the right, whatever. Like, they were always over analyzing the performance, and it was tense, and Christina and I sat in the back and just quietly trying to stay out of it. And then Eric and I did our own thing. Eric and I were the ones that would go out drinking and go down to the bar and go out to restaurants. And, we just did our own thing. I mean, Gene and Paul never came out with us. Christina and Bruce did, and Gary and his wife sometimes. But mostly we were all just kind of on our own. And backstage was always very intimidating to me because Gene and Paul, I was scared to death. I was a teenager. I mean, I was in my early 20s. I was always intimidated by them because they were, I had them put posters of them on my wall, and it was always a kind of surreal thing with them. But when I was with Eric, it was very real. The same experience you had with him is why I ended up with him, because he was so friendly and easy to talk to. And
driving in that Toyota the first time, was it shocking though for you though to see what was going on backstage? Because when you're 14, 15 and you run off to the Journey show or the Van Halen show and you're a rock fan, you think, wow, it's a wonderful party, and then everybody's they're all best friends and they hug each other and they high five, and then you get to see the reality. And I've seen that reality too, and not just with Kiss, with other bands, and you go, oh, this is really just a business where they punch in and punch out. Was that disappointing or shocking or educational?
No, because Eric and I had our own fun. Just because the band didn't have parties afterwards didn't mean that we didn't. And Christina and I were always while Kiss was on stage, because we'd seen the shows a million times, we were backstage partying with Winger and Slaughter. And then we'd rush out to the bus, and we didn't even watch the show. And Bruce and Eric were so how were we doing? And we're oh my God, you were so great. This is the best show ever. Meanwhile, we were flirting with Kip Winger the whole time or something. But,
which is funny, by the way.
Not in the way that we wouldn't have, we just thought he was cute. We'd go get M&Ms from his room. We're just bored and silly. She's still one of my best friends. Bruce's ex-wife, Christina. Yeah. We had a lot of fun. I don't feel like I missed a thing. I'm actually really grateful that I was on the road with Kiss and not, a heavy partying band. Because I'm very proud that my book is not another Hollywood train wreck book. Right. It's a survival story. Right. And I think a lot of people assumed it would be one, but here I am, still standing. And I think had I been, I don't know, name a band that did a lot of drugs.
Motley Crue.
Yeah, Motley Crue's the first. Thank God I wasn't Nikki Sixx's group, and I might have ended up on heroin or something, right. Or in jail for drug dealing or whatever.
Well, all right. Let me turn to the serious then for a second. You do mention a DUI in the book, and you talk about going through a pregnancy while having to do the DUI classes and stuff.
What a nightmare.
Yeah, and you talk about it openly. You could have easily brushed that under the rug, and I could have read the book and never have known. right?
Yeah, but
Why did
it
you
was
choose to include that?
because it was 19. Because I'm an open book. Number one.
Right.
Number two, it was 19 years ago. I've never had another DUI since.
Right.
So I think I included it because it explained the loneliness of my
Right.
pregnancy. You know, when I did not get pregnant. I wasn't drinking while I was pregnant.
Right.
I must have got the DUI just a couple days before I got pregnant because I know I got pregnant in Seattle and it was the night before I went to Seattle. So I literally got it the night before I got pregnant. But it took so long to process that DUI that 7 months later, I'm still I'm getting bigger and bigger. Every week I have to go to, the classes. And then, the guy next to me is like, I told him I was pregnant. He's like, oh, I just thought you were getting fat.
Right.
How
nice. But then you go to the Mothers Against Drunk Driving and you walk in and they just look at you and go,
I had to go. There's 200 women there in downtown LA, and I have to walk in, and I gained 68 pounds, so I'm huge. And I had to go, and they're all glaring at me like I was drinking while I was pregnant. So yeah, I learned my lesson. I do not drink and drive anymore, and never will again. That teacher told the whole class we'd all be back, and I'm like, not me, and I was right.
Wow. So including it in the book, is it somewhat cathartic where you just go, you know what, I've had this, I've had this, in a sense, shame by going in front of the mad, and you just go, you know what, I'm just going to let go of it. I'm just going to let the people know, and it's out. Is that sort of the purpose
I never even thought twice about revealing the DUI. I never even, until you mentioned it, I never even thought of it as controversial. A lot of things that are really normal to me seem weird to other people. Like my son called me last night to tell me that his girlfriend's parents invited us over for Thanksgiving dinner. Me? Big, long, silent pause. And then I go, that's weird. And then I had to step back for a minute. And I'm like, he's 18. What was I doing at 18? Oh my God, I was on Kiss's tour bus at 18. And I'm like, I'm the weird one. My son's not weird. So, and then I did have to ask him, I'm like, what do her parents know about me? Like, what have you told them? What has she told them? Like, because I am self-conscious about, well, are they going to think that I'm like, that single mom slut playmate chick, or are they going to be open-minded about who I am? I guess that's why I'm comfortable, I don't know, around my own weird environment, like my rocker friends and everybody. I like things to be out there in the open, just take me or leave me,
Well, and by the way, that's something that a lot of us have learned from Howard Stern. It's just better to be just straight up honest, and then you don't have skeletons in the closet because it's there. So it's just like, okay. Well, in fact, talk to me about that a bit, because you do have this past, but there is sort of this theory in psychology that every 10 years we become a whole new person. And the example I always give is you're 5 years old, you're wearing a Dora t-shirt. You're 15 years old, you'd never be seen dead in a Dora t-shirt. You're 25, you look back at your high school picture, you go, oh, how could I have that hair? And so every 10 years we become this new person. Where are you now in terms of that? Are you still the rocker chick that wants to go out and date the, David Lee Roth, even if he's 70? Do you still, where are you in terms of just in life?
People always get that wrong about me. I don't want to date rocker guys. I mean, just because I like the music doesn't mean I want to date one anymore. And I have a lot of rocker friends. I travel in those circles. So, I'm not dating any of them currently. No, I actually, I don't even know what my type is anymore. Certainly since COVID, I don't even think about it. But I don't know when I stopped being that girl, a very long time ago. But then off and on, if one comes along, like 10 years ago, I briefly dated a rocker guy, but a couple of months. But not like, I like the music. I'm pretty much a fan like everybody else. It's
all about the music.
Yeah, I had a friend on Facebook, another playmate. Someone asked, she posted about my book, and somebody said, well, what's it about? and she wrote, I don't know, I didn't read it yet, but she's dated all these rock stars. And I was like, actually, I haven't. It's mainly Eric,
Right.
And my silly crush on David Lee Roth that makes a funny story, but it's not like we never dated.
Right. I'm going to ask you about that story. I do want to ask you a little bit about. Actually, I'm trying to think. Do I want to ask you about Karen McDougal, or do I not want to ask you about that?
I think I don't know why we want to give her the stage of
Fair.
my story.
So let's talk about something else then. Let's go over to Stay Young and Skinny. At the end of the book, you mention a whole bunch of names, and you mention thank yous, and you talk about Stay Young and Skinny, which is a website that I have in front of me. What is that product, and why are you endorsing it, and is it your company? Talk to me a little bit about that.
My father is a scientist, and my father has patented a molecular hydrogen that's bonded with the special fiber that fills you up. So, he is the one that developed the product, and I am developing. I make it beautiful,
Right, you sell it.
I just rebranded the entire. I'm about to relaunch. It's called Skinny Snacks, but it'll still be stayyoungandskinny.com. Of course, inspired by David Lee Roth. And so I just redesigned all the packaging and the ads. It's been a lot of work, but I'm grateful for something to do during this virus because, I'm used to just driving around in traffic in LA, and I've gotten so much done, so much done, including finishing my book and developing Stay Young and Skinny. So I don't miss the traffic, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, we're much better off. And I'll just quickly say one thing. In your book, you also dedicated to Joey Casada, who's a friend of mine. Did he guilt you into that, or did he actually have to pay for it?
No, I thank Joey because Joey gave me a lot of advice on the book because he wrote a book and he gave me lots of tips that I used. So that's why I thanked him. And plus, I actually didn't know what a huge Eric Carr fan he was until I listened to his book on audio. And it's like the whole thing's about Eric. I was like, oh, wow.
I know.
Because I've been talking to Joey for a while. I know him through Eric's sister. She introduced us a couple of years ago to talk about some business things. And so I just didn't know what a huge Eric Carr fan he was until then. And I also wanted to include him just because of that.
I know it's almost obsessive with Joey. Let me get over to the David Lee Roth story. So you meet David Lee Roth, you see him at this club, and then the next week you plan on going back to the club, and you make a whole, I've got a plan. You have a plan.
It was like every Thursday for a very long time plan. The book only explains one night, but it went on and on.
Right.
Yeah.
So talk to me about this plan, and then of course you talk in the story about how you wake up, and he gives you a T-shirt, and then he drives you and gets you fresh orange juice and the whole thing. But you don't really remember much of the night other than that. Talk to me a little bit about that experience. Is it somewhat frustrating that you don't remember it? Is it kind of, hey, it's rock and roll and David Lee Roth. It's what it's supposed to be. Talk to me about that story.
I really regret not remembering it. Damn. I remember being in the back seat of his car, making out with him. And Edmund was driving us, and I remember the building. I was right next to Tower Records behind Spago, and the living room floor, and waking up and that, where am I? And then this armlet comes around me and this big smile, and I was like, oh fuck, I'm with David Lee Roth. So and then of course I couldn't even speak. I was like, Then I do the quite opposite at this stage of my life. I talk his ear off, but I wish I would have stayed quiet like that girl did. But I kicked myself for drinking all that whiskey, but I knew I was drinking the whiskey. I remember it like yesterday. I knew I had decided that was the night, and I went straight up to the bar. I had no business at that age. Now I could handle 3 shots of whiskey, but back then I had no business doing 3 shots of whiskey, and completely blacked out. Oh well.
and then you wake up and he drives you off and gives you orange juice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. I wish I still had that T-shirt. It was a white Miss Olympia shirt, and he had a little slit cut down the front, like everyone used to do in the '80s. I don't know why I got rid of that shirt. Should have saved it. But yeah, and yeah, he drove me home and got out the trunk and got a pen and paper and got my number. Never called. I was probably now I'm ruining my whole book, but
Well,
I
see
was like,
that. By
God,
the way, that's the one thing.
I must have been really lame in bed. I guess I was boring, you know. But then I found out all these years later he doesn't remember it either. So at least I wasn't bad in bed. We can't blame it on that.
No, it's that's the one thing when you do a book interview, you don't want to give everything away, but you also don't want to not talk about it because it's like, well, we're here to promote, of course, Unrated. In terms, and I know that we're going to run out of time because you have another interview coming up in 15 minutes, but in terms of Donald Trump, we are recording this on the election night. You took to Twitter and revealed stuff and said stuff. Was that a decision that you would do again? Because you did take some flack, but also you did get some supporters. Talk to me a little bit about that situation, and what do you do with something like that?
I wouldn't do it again. When I tweeted it, I was with Barbara, and for some reason, she wanted her story out about her and Donald. And me and my bright ideas, I was like, let's tweet about it. And then, but we didn't say exactly what happened with Barbara. We were hoping like the press would contact Barbara because we didn't know how to get her story out. So I really wasn't trying to reveal Karen and Trump had an affair, or I would have straight out tweeted Donald had an affair with Karen. I didn't. I just said Donald loves Playmates, and I included her so she would see it. And 12 hours later, I swear, in the morning, I woke up and went, ugh, I should not get involved in such issues. Delete, delete, delete. Well, 2 years later, what kind of warped person screenshots them and waits 2 years later and files a court case? That's somebody who I believe had a master plan the whole time. Because they were silly. They were deleted. It was done, and it wound up opening up this whole thing. If I had to do it again, I wouldn't do it. But then again, one thing leads to another, and it was a catalyst for me writing the book.
Right.
It took all of these other things to make me realize that they don't define me, and what does, and I'm going to figure that out. So I went in search of it, and that's sort of how the book was born. And
it turned out good. And I'll finish on this. For years, Kiss fans have heard rumors about Eric's passing and how the band tried to fire him and how they tried to do all kinds of stuff, and it ended up kind of being distasteful, for the lack of a better word. And you do talk about that in there. Bring me back a little bit to that moment in time. I mean, do you look at it as, hey, business is business and you got to do what you got to do, or do you look at it like, yeah, but he's your buddy, he's your teammate? How do you sort of?
I thought it was heartless and cruel.
Right.
I still do. It pains me to think of the suffering that they put Eric through, because the man was fighting for his life. Mm-hmm. It was not a secret. They full well knew he was going through chemotherapy, and were sending people to harassing them personally to get him to sign the resignation papers, and he refused to do it. And from my point of view, being the girlfriend that was, doing positive affirmations with him and posting positive affirmations all around his room and trying to get him to read, books like the relaxation response. Like, I was trying to keep him stress-free and nurse him and be nurturing and help him through this. And I felt that they were undermining me, like, every step of the way, with their negativity. And I wanted him to be positive, to believe he was going to heal, that
Yeah.
he was going to live. And yes, I was extremely angry with them. And it took a lot of work on my part since then to get over that anger. Eventually, I decided I didn't want to live in a place of anger.
Right.
And I actually prayed for God to give them exactly what they have, love in their lives and success. And when you pray for somebody you're angry at, it seems to melt away the anger. And then as I matured over the years, I tend to look at it more like, okay, everybody was doing the best that they could with what knowledge we had at the time. And I think that I can say with all certainty that they regret it. I think if they could go back in time and do things differently, they would. And that's why I say the best they were doing with the knowledge they had at the time. And they were also getting advised by people like Larry Mazer, management at the time, on the choices that they made. So I'm not going to blame one person in this. I'm not going to say it was Paul's fault. I'm not going to, that it was a shitty thing. The way they handled it was shitty and very sad. And I wouldn't want to be them having that regret. I actually feel sorry for them because they have to live with that choice that they made.
And this might be an unfair question, but I'll ask it anyway. You say in the book that he had 3 to 5 years to live and he dies after 8 months. Do you think that undue pressure, that stress, because we know stress can be very devastating on you.
Stress is a killer.
Stress is a killer. I mean, I don't want to say, do you think it led him to his grave sooner, but do you think that stress prevented him from healing a little bit? I mean, I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible, but...
Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
It didn't help.
Right.
And you just made me cry.
Yeah. Oh, I apologize. Well,
no, that means you're good. That means you're a good journalist. You got to be. But yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay. And here, I'll finish on this. You are doing an audiobook version of this. You've read it. You're doing that now. You've had some emotions. How can I put this? Why is it such an emotional process to read your own book and go through it? Is it just bringing back scars and just bringing back, tears of joy or tears of pain?
I cried so many times during my audiobook. The producer kept having to stop, let me have a moment, start again. But I said, it's good, to hear it in my voice, to hear the emotion. But yeah, I can't be sobbing during the book. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting reading the audiobook out loud because there was parts that I didn't expect to be emotional over. For instance, when you hear me tell the story of my being abandoned in pregnancy, the way that I talked about Steve and Eric, the anger that came out in the tone of my voice that I thought I had buried a long time ago. And my second to the last chapter, I had to warn the producer, I cannot read that. I've read it 1,000 times. I can't get through it without crying. That one's
too. Well, see, you can phone up Joey Casada and have him read it in your voice. So it'll work.
I wonder if Joey has read my book. I don't even know if he has yet.
Actually, I have a meeting with him where I'm going to read it to him for you. So, no, I'm kidding. I love Joe. We love Joey. Joey's the greatest. Listen, I know you have another interview in 5 minutes, so let's wrap it up there. This has been an absolute joy. The book, of course, I will put it up in front of my face. Unrated by Carrie Stevens is definitely worth picking up. And it's not just for Kiss fans. It's not just for Van Halen fans. It's for fans who love a great personal life story, which is what you have.
Yes, I've been catching up the last few days, the whole cast of One Day at a Time. I listened to Mackenzie Phillips' audiobook, which was great, by the way. It was really interesting. And Valerie Bertinelli's, and, I wanted to learn more about Eddie. That's what inspired my One Day at a Time weekend that I just had.
The rabbit hole of One Day at a Time. Well, hey, and that's, you know what? That's a good life lesson. Just take it one day at a time. That's the way to go through life.
Exactly. That's all we have is today. We certainly on this election day do not know what is going to happen tomorrow.
Nope.
So I don't know when you're planning on airing this, but it's a little nerve-wracking.
It is, and it's also sort of interesting because I'm Canadian. I'm up in Montreal, so I didn't get to vote. I have no horse in the race. So it's kind of it's kind of
Oh, I have one Canadian friend who called me this morning. She's now a U.S. citizen. She just voted for the first time. I am not going to get political, but I want to send her back to Canada for her she voted.
Well, listen, there's a lot of people that voted for Trudeau that I'd love to send to the States. So we'll leave it, we'll leave it on that. But
Let's trade. Yeah.
yeah, it's you know what? At the end of the day, having gone through the different presidents from the Carters to the, eventually it all works out. It washes out. But it's going to be
Yeah.
it's going to be a very interesting next 4 years, regardless of who wins.
That's kind of what I said to my friend who was getting political with me, and I said I'm going to be a little more negative than you. I said it's going to be that way no matter who wins.
Yes.
She's talking about the economy. I'm like, I think it's going to be bad no matter who wins. Can we? Okay, not to get into the
No,
COVID
but
thing.
the COVID economy, it doesn't really. COVID didn't choose Republican or Democrat or an ours liberal or conservative. It's bad for everyone, and
Exactly.
nobody's going to have a great plan. I mean, in Quebec, we suddenly have triple-digit billion-dollar deficit, and we had a budget surplus before it started, and it's just like, whoa, okay, how did that happen? So
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. If I were Biden, I wouldn't even want the job at this point. I'd be like, oh boy, it's gonna be.
No, what you need
But
to
oh
do
well.
is pick up Carrie's book, read that in the next 4 years. Pick up Joey Licious for Joey Casada because we love Joey.
Yeah.
Do that, and there you
I
go.
loved Joey's life story.
Oh, Joey's hilarious.
Start with a Dream. Yeah, I loved his audiobook. My son even walked through the room and he was like, what's this? What are you listening to? Because he really liked it too. So everybody go get Start with a Dream. Never mind Unrated. No, I'm just
Yeah, no,
kidding.
get on Raid. Oh, start with a dream. Joey Licious is the wrestling thing that he's doing. That's right. But
Yes.
yeah. No, I just love to I love to bust Joey's ball. He's one of the greatest, and so are you. Thank you so much for today, as we say in Montreal. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was great talking with you.
Absolutely, and we will see you on Twitter. We will be posting about something later that has to do with rock.
Okay, I'll be watching for you.
Cheers. Merci.
Okay.
Bonsoir.